Hey, Bianca here. Welcome to Teach Like Bianca. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some tips with working with paraprofessionals, or if you are thinking about becoming a paraprofessional, a teacher's assistant, an instructional assistant, whatever it may be called within your district. These are some things that you can expect with working with a classroom teacher. I also want to preface this was actually a professional development that I turned into this video for YouTube that was actually in my Teacher Life Resource Club membership, which is now a bundle. And if you're interested, I'll put the link down below. Just so you can see what that's like. To give you a little bit of background, as a special education teacher, I used to supervise quite a few paraprofessionals and meet with them about expectations for the classroom when they're in the special education classroom and within the general ed classroom. Now, as a dean of students, I represent paraprofessionals at a PLC level. So I lead the PLC conversation and we discuss what's going on either at recess duty, lunch duty, within their pullout groups, and just a variety of things that make sure that everybody is feeling comfortable within the workplace. And if they have any issues, we could talk about that and kind of just make sure that we have that professional learning collaborative time for everyone to talk and make sure that everybody is feeling like their needs are met, because a lot of times being a para can feel like it's a lonely job and that they are not heard and they may not be felt like they're cared about within the classroom, which is a terrible experience. And I don't want that for the paras that I work with within our school, and just understanding that their role is important. I want them to be heard. Let's go in and talk about what that looks like, working with paraprofessionals, and then just what you can expect and what we would want to see as teachers for paraprofessionals in the workplace. So let's go on and started, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.
Let's go ahead and get started. So in this learning experience, you are going to understand the roles and the background of a parapro. You're going to know how to include paraeducators in the process of your classroom daily. So maybe with data, behavior management, instruction, and then being able to facilitate communication with them and what that might look like. So to give you a little bit of background, one of my first year of teaching special education, I had no idea that I was going to be supervising a parapro, and I didn't get this training in school. I just was kind of thrown into, oh, this is your para. What do you want them to do? And I was just like, I have no idea. I don't know what to do. So for the most part, I had to do a little bit of on-the-job training, and it usually ended up being a little bit more hectic than it was making my life as a teacher, especially a first, second year teacher, easier. But overall, a para can make your life a lot easier than hectic. But if you don't have, I guess, the foundations of being able to know how to supervise them or supervise assistants, then it's going to really just mess up your whole entire day in the classroom. So for the most part, my very first year, I would just tell my para, oh, can you just grade these stack of papers? Because I didn't know how to utilize them in the classroom. And especially as a special education teacher, it was kind of hard to let go, and it was hard to have them do any sort of assessments because I wanted to know how my students were as learners and how I could help them and how that they can learn best. So I was always doing a lot of the work in the classroom myself, when in fact I could have made it a lot easier for myself, and especially in terms of paperwork, if I just incorporated them a little bit better. So here's what I've learned, and here's a little bit of feedback that I've also received from teachers that have paras in the gen ed classroom, and what are some best steps for you in working with them. So in understanding their role in the background, you first want to be able to know your boundaries in the classroom. So even though I was a supervisor, if they're coming in my classroom, they might have a space like an extra desk or somewhere where they can work either with students or maybe work on a project that you have them working on for a lesson or a unit. Um, but knowing your boundaries, so knowing not just that giving them their space in the classroom, but also just kind of knowing, your desk is your desk still. It's just like if a substitute or a guest teacher came in, you don't want your guest teacher, your substitute, handing out pencils to everybody from inside your desk. So, kind of understanding those boundaries as well. And then most of the time, your para should have a schedule. So, if you're not the one making the schedule with them, their supervisor should have already emailed you a schedule or sent them a schedule so you know what time they're going to be in your classroom and when to expect them, because most of the time paras aren't in your classroom for the entire day. It might be for just reading time or math time, or maybe it's for a particular student, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But just knowing exactly when your para is supposed to show up and be in your classroom is probably the best way that you understand their role and what they're supposed to do in your classroom. So you always want to create an atmosphere of respect and recognition and open communication, because from what I gather from working with pairs for 8 years was that they really always felt like it was kind of second rate, like they were second rate um, to everything at the school. Like they felt like they were included in, things that involved teachers, and it could just be, meetings or different, maybe staff potlucks or things like that. So just always trying to include them and giving them their recognition, and just keeping an open line of communication, because and I'm going to get to this in a little bit, depending on the type of classroom that you run is going to be different. And so the paras have to understand, just like the students, that each classroom has a different set of rules, and a different set of objectives for that particular classroom, and they have to learn that all as well. So one of the best ways for you to understand their role and understand you and your background and how you run your classroom is just to meet with your para. Either have a lunch where you have lunch together and you just talk about um, the goals and outcomes for the week, or what's working, what's not working. And that could just happen one day a week. It could happen once a month. But ideally, you want to always meet with them at the beginning of the school year, even before they get into your classroom, because a lot of times when they're learning new rules, they're learning those things along with the students, and it's good to, start with them and get their input early on. Also, always just kind of include your para with classroom rules and policy so that they know as well. Um, I've been in a lot of situations as a supervisor where paras didn't know the rules and didn't know the policy, and they were kind of put in awkward situations with the teacher and the student, and just within the classroom in general. So just including your para so that they understand the classroom rules and policy, and they could have a copy of it and keep things with them as well, like a folder in that class, in your particular class, so they can have those things to reflect on. Also include them in daily and weekly schedules. So if anything changes, they can alter their schedule to come back and meet into your classroom as you need them. So at times, and I'm going to get to this in the special services part, but at times your students in the classroom might reflect if you need a para or not, because a lot of times when we used to send paras out, it was depending on if there was a lot of general ed students mixed with special education students, and it was more of an inclusive environment. So we had a para push in to help out when needed. So just knowing where and how maybe more of instructional procedures are going to go around that. How do you want your para working with this particular student? And then also with the lesson plan format. So maybe you can have them step back in part of a lesson and then push in a little bit more to help the student during a particular part of the lesson. So, and even within your special services, which they may be only there to assist certain students, and when they're there to only assist certain students, it's really, it works really well to not to group those students together, because we don't want those students to feel like they're excluded from the classroom. But your para can go around and just help as needed, but really focus it on those particular students that need that special accommodation or that extra help in the classroom. And then also include your para with classroom organization. They're really that always having that, you know, second person that's around to help out, that can give you feedback even within your classroom procedures, works very well. Also with technology, has worked really well once paras were able to get, you know, personal laptops and technology that they can use, because it really helps, especially if you're using Google Classroom. You can have them as a co-teacher in the classroom and really help facilitate if there's a lot of correspondence that's happening as well. And then for small group instruction, you know, it took a lot for me as a teacher to let go of how I always do whole group instruction, even as a special education teacher, and kind of step back and have my para run a small group. So having your para run small groups really helps, and you can always swap groups so that you know what's happening with that particular group and how they are as a learner as well. So there's so much that you can do when you just have an extra adult, extra teacher in the classroom to help out. So in the classroom, when you do have a para, you have to make sure that you're explaining what task needs to be complete, why they need to be completed, how and where. So you want to be specific. Knowing that your paramate is not going to be in the classroom the entire day, you don't have to give them a space in your classroom like a desk. That's usually for, you know, special education teachers, where they have a certain desk where they're always kind of hubbed in your classroom. But when it means where, you want to be specific. So let them know where is a good place where they can work, where students can either come to them, or they can go to students and work, or where, you know, the best place for them to complete whatever task needs to be completed. And also discuss appropriate instructional roles and responsibility of the teacher and para. So I used to have a para that was in a gen ed classroom, and sometimes she would answer questions instead of having the students answer questions, or maybe giving the answers to questions when it should have been all on the student's responsibility. So discuss what's appropriate, when and how much to help and how much just to kind of let back, so that they know that responsibility of them as a para to their students. And then outside the classroom, it's always good to have that conversation that they need to have confidentiality. There's been quite a few times where, not where I had instances, but where other teachers had instances where paras talk to families and share more than they should, or maybe they pick up the phone and there's a parent on the phone and they're sharing more than they should on the phone. So explain to them their role in talking to families. It doesn't happen a lot, but I know when it comes to the point when they're in the classroom and you can't get to the phone and they go and answer your phone in the classroom, you know, what needs to be said and how they should take a message first instead of answering any questions. And then another big one is with student behavior. So your rules and how you discipline in a classroom changes from each classroom to the next, but a lot of students really take for granted the help of the para, and they may not have the same respect that is given from the student to the para, and from the student to the teacher, and vice versa. So they may have more discipline issues with students than with the teacher. So understanding what is their disciplinary role, like how would they discipline a student? Would they remove the student and have them go out into go to the office? Will they call somebody from the office to remove a student? Those types of things, because usually what happens, it really gets confusing, especially if let's say that you had a guest teacher and the para was in the classroom disciplining because a lot of issues were happening with the guest teacher. So just making sure that they know what is expected to them in terms of disciplining in the classroom. And then behavior expectations. So what the same expectations you hold in your classroom for your students, they need to hold in the classroom for your students. So if there's something negative going on in your classroom, that they know that it's okay for them to step in at that moment, especially if you're teaching in the front of the class and there's something that's going on in the back of the class, or there's something that you're handling at one side of the room and something else is going on another side of the room, that they can handle it. So knowing what those behavior expectations look like and how that they can step in. And then just student behavior in large and small groups. The large group, it kind of goes the same with discipline and overall behavior expectations, but maintaining everything exactly the same as if they were the teacher, and with the same amount of respect. So one thing I do want to add is, so it's not a one size fits all situation at all working with a para, because your teaching style is different, your philosophy on teaching could be different from another teacher, your students are different, your students may act completely different from one classroom to the next. I know students, when I had a para in my class, in a special education classroom, they're a lot more open to talk and communicate. But once they got to the gen ed classroom and the para would follow them in that gen ed classroom, they were a lot more quiet and closed and a little bit more reserved. So every situation where a para is working with a student and working with another teacher in their classroom, it's definitely not a one size fits all. So just making sure that you communicate to your para everything from your teaching philosophy to your teaching style, to setting goals, planning, rules, and policy of the classroom. Usually your para is there to have a direct goal. It could be making notes for an IEP. It could also be working with you to help accommodate that student. So usually your para has that schedule. The overall is just to create that positive work environment for yourself in the classroom, and most importantly for the students. And you guys can build on each other's strengths, engage and collaborate, and just continue to build growth for all students in the classroom. So that was just, my quick learning experience on working with paraprofessionals. And I hope you were able to get something very, very new and interesting with working with paras and teachers assistants. And then if you have any questions, in the comment section, and I'll see you next time.